Drumaconnor House, County Monaghan, Ireland. November 1871. Two sisters, aged 24 and 22, are dancing too close to a fireplace. The hoop skirts they are wearing balloon out from their waists like cages. Air rushes up through the cage. The fabric catches. Within seconds, both of them are engulfed. Their names were Emily and Mary Wilde. They were half-sisters of Oscar Wilde. Emily died on November 8th. Mary held on for 2 weeks of agony before she died too. They weren't the first to burn this way. They wouldn't be the last. Around 3,000 women in England died this way in just 15 years. And the woman who tried to warn them, who tried to give them an alternative, had a name that became a punchline that has outlived her by more than a century. What you put on first in the morning isn't a fashion choice. It's the difference between Emily and Mary Wilde and you. I'm Aidan Thomas of Hidden History, and this is the hidden history of underwear. Because for most of human history, you wore whatever you could find, or nothing at all. And in some centuries, that decision could kill you. But here's the thing most people don't realize. Underwear is older than civilization itself. September 19th, 1991. Two German hikers in the Ötztal Alps on the Austrian-Italian border stumble onto a frozen body sticking out of the ice. They assume it's a recent climbing accident. It isn't. Carbon dating at the South Tyrol Museum of Archaeology puts the body at around 3,300 BC. He is older than the wheel. He is older than written language. He is older than the pyramids by 800 years. They call him Ötzi. And when they unwrap him from the ice, he is wearing a goat hide loincloth, secured with a leather belt. The first documented pair of underwear in human history was worn 5,300 years ago by a man who was murdered in the Alps before anyone in Egypt had laid the first stone of the Great Pyramid. The Egyptians went further. Tomb art from 2700 BC shows the skenti, a pleated linen wrap worn by everyone from farmers to pharaohs. When Howard Carter cracked open Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, he counted them. The boy king had been buried with 145 pairs of underwear. Let that sink in. A pharaoh chose to take 145 of them into the afterlife. He thought he would need them for eternity. But here's where it gets interesting. The Romans took it further than anyone. Both men and women wore the sublegaculum, a linen loincloth tied at the hip. In Sicily, at the Villa Romana del Casale, archaeologists uncovered a mosaic from around 320 AD that shows 10 Roman women in two-piece athletic wear. Bandeau on top, briefs on the bottom. It looks indistinguishable from something you would buy at a sporting goods store today. The Romans had sports bras in the 4th century. They had bikinis 1,200 years before most of Europe had even heard of Christianity. You just cannot make this stuff up. But Rome falls. And when Rome falls, it takes its underwear with it. Europe was about to learn, in the worst way possible, what happens when you let 1,000 years go by without it. But the fall didn't happen all at once. It happened in 2 halves, and only 1/2 of the population paid for it. Medieval European men kept wearing brays, linen drawers that were knee-length and tied at the waist. The basics held. Women did not. For nearly 1,000 years, European women wore a chemise, a long undershirt, under their dresses and nothing else. No drawers, no knickers, nothing covering anything below the waist. This is the part most history books tiptoe around. Drawers were considered indecent for women. Drawers were what prostitutes wore. Through the Black Death, through the Renaissance, through the Enlightenment, the most powerful queens and the poorest peasants had the same thing on under their skirts, which was nothing. And then came the 1850s, and the catastrophe. The crinoline arrived in London in 1856. It was a massive bell-shaped cage hoop skirt made of steel rings and fabric, sometimes 6 feet across. It became the must-have item of the Victorian era. Duchesses wore them, factory workers wore them, and underneath, the same chemise tradition. Bare skin, nothing else. Now picture the 19th century. Open flames everywhere. candles, fireplaces, gas lamps. A woman walks past a hearth. The crinoline acts like a chimney, drawing hot air upward through the cage. The fabric catches fire. There is no underwear to slow the burn. The Lancet in 1858 started counting bodies. Roughly 200 women per year in Britain were burning to death this way. Florence Nightingale publicly called crinolines absurd and deadly. Nobody listened. Between 1850 and 1864, an estimated 3,000 women in England alone died in crinoline-related fires. 3,000 women. Emily and Mary Wilde were two of them. And there was one woman who saw the bodies pile up and who tried to do something about it. What happened to her is the part nobody talks about. Her name was Amelia Bloomer. She was a New York newspaper editor, born in 1818. She edited The Lily, the first newspaper in America run by a woman, for women. In 1851, she did something nobody had dared. She designed a sensible, safer alternative. Loose Turkish trousers worn under a knee-length skirt. Drawers, finally, visible and practical. They would not catch fire from a fireplace. The reaction was savage. Punch magazine ran mocking cartoons of her for months. Sermons were preached against her from pulpits across England and America. Crowds heckled women on the street wearing the reform dress. The garment became known as bloomers, and the word became a national joke that has outlived her by 130 years. By 1859, Bloomer gave up. She wrote that the mockery was overshadowing the women's suffrage cause she actually cared about. She abandoned the reform dress publicly. She kept fighting for women's rights for the rest of her life. The underwear battle was over. She died in Council Bluffs, Iowa, on December 30th, 1894. She was 76. The crinoline deaths kept happening for years after she stopped fighting. She was right. They let her be ridiculed for it. And women kept burning. By the way, if you made it this far, you are clearly the kind of person who finds this stuff fascinating. If you want more stories like this, the hidden stories behind the things you use every day, hit subscribe. Now back to our story. And the woman who finally gave women modern underwear? Her name is one you've almost certainly never heard. And what happened to her is the part most people get completely wrong. But before we get to her, you need to know what you've been told and why almost all of it is wrong. You probably think the modern bra is a 20th century corporate invention. You probably think it was designed by a fashion house or a department store chemist. It was not. It was invented on a New York bedroom floor by a teenager with two handkerchiefs. Manhattan. A 19-year-old debutante named Mary Phelps Jacob was being strangled by a whalebone corset before a ball. She could not breathe. She ripped the corset off. With her maid, she stitched together two silk handkerchiefs and a length of pink ribbon. By the end of the night, she had the world's first modern brassiere held against her ribs with safety pins. U.S. patent number 1,115,674. Granted November 3rd, 1914. The patent was titled Backless Brassiere. It is one of the most consequential patents in the history of women's clothing. She sold it to the Warner Brothers Corset Company for $1,500. Warner Brothers made an estimated $15 million from her invention over the next 30 years. In today's money, over $400 million. She walked away from all of it. She renamed herself Caresse Crosby. She moved to Paris. She became an avant-garde publisher who first put James Joyce and Ernest Hemingway into affordable paperback. She died in Rome in 1970, age 78. Almost nobody outside of fashion historians knows her name. But here's the twist. The story doesn't end with her either. It ends in March 2020. The world locks down. Within months, United States bra sales dropped 12% year over year. A Glamour survey found 81% of women reported wearing a bra less often. Wireless and comfort bras rose 40%. Industry analysts called it the biggest single shift in women's undergarments since the corset was abandoned 100 years earlier. Victoria's Secret announced 250 store closures and was sold off the next year. It took 5,300 years to invent modern underwear. It took 18 months of the pandemic to start unraveling it again. Underwear isn't just about modesty or fashion. It's about who lived through the dance, who made it home from the fireplace, who didn't burn. From Ötzi's goat hide loincloth, frozen in the Alps for 5,300 years, to a Roman bikini in a Sicilian mosaic, to a New York reformer mocked into silence, to a teenager with 2 handkerchiefs and a pink ribbon, the story of underwear is the story of every body that ever needed something between itself and the world. The wealthy made it a status symbol. The poor went without. The reformers were ridiculed. The inventors were forgotten. And in 15 years of one bad fashion trend, an estimated 3,000 women in England paid for the gap with their lives. What you put on first in the morning is older than every empire you've ever heard of. And someone fought, and someone burned, so you wouldn't have to. Next week, we are uncovering the hidden history behind another invention you use every day, the hidden history of socks. Until then, take a look around. History is everywhere.